हाथी नाम लखी दो मोने अच्छी है तो Good morning again. We welcome distinguished guests, esteemed speakers and panelists on the dais, and all the participants here this morning. The plenary session on the school and higher education is going to look at how the foundation of education and learning that starts in the school and continues in the higher education institution is so critical in transformative change and building global citizenship. Mr. Antonio, the UN Secretary, has rightly said, the choices we make or fail to make today could result in either the breakdown or breakthrough to a greener, better, and safer future. With this backdrop, this plenary will look at the environmental education and the role of education for sustainable development, especially in the formal education systems, the needs to strengthen the system, build capacities, greening education, and the curriculum and the practices in school education and higher education institutions. The Global Education Partnership is a unique example and the strategy towards making this possible. This plenary is going to be for about an hour from starting now. I have the pleasure to invite Professor Charles Hopkins and requesting him to chair this session. Professor Hopkins is the UNESCO Chair in Reorienting Education Towards Sustainability at the York University, Toronto, Canada. Professor Charles has been part of the UNESCO, United Nations University, Higher Education Institutions, Ministry of Education across Asia, Europe, Africa, and America in the fields of education and sustainability. Among the speakers, we also have Dr. Pramod Kumar Sharma. He is the Senior Director of Education at the Foundation for Environmental Education at the Denmark. As the Education and Sustainable Development professional, he has 27 years of experience with a range of working with schools, corporates, programs focusing on the school education, and also working on rural development issues. At FEE, he looks at eco-schools, eco-campuses, and please come. Please join. We are happy that ma'am is able to join. I continue. So we welcome Dr. Pramod Kumar Sharma. Professor Thomas Hoffman is the Honorary Professor of Education for Sustainable Development at the Leuphana University Institute of Sustainability Education and Psychology at Germany. He is also the founding member of ESG ExpertNet, promoting education for sustainable development globally. His work addresses global challenges, systems thinking approaches, and solution-oriented teaching. We welcome you, sir. We also have Sri Abhay Mangaldas, sir. He is the Managing Trustee at the Shreyas Foundation. Sir has been pioneering Montessori education and Shreyas has been pioneering outdoor learning at Ahmedabad over various decades, and we have the pleasure of having him as well. Madam Archana Sharma Avasthi, good morning ma'am, welcome. Is the Joint Secretary, Department of School Education and Literacy, Ministry of Education. Ma'am has been currently serving as a Joint Secretary in the Department of School Education, responsible for Samagra Siksha, Foundational Literacy and Numeracy, Adult Education, among various others roles and responsibilities. Ma'am is an Indian Revenue Service Officer. She is also an electronics engineer and a counseling psychologist by education, and a bureaucrat and a profession, and working with a span of 22 years of experience with various departments, including income tax, revenue services, and director of women and child development, and looking after ICDS program. We also have our colleague, Dr. Avinash Madale, program director at Center for Environment Education. Dr. Madale has vast experience of over 2 decades looking at field-based implementation programs, both at the schools and higher education institutions. With this, I invite Professor Charles Hopkins to give his keynote address.
Thank you very, very much. In setting the stage and just a few opening remarks before we begin, I'd like to put a bit of a perspective on things. The whole idea of environmental education did not begin in Tbilisi. There are parallels that are going on. Environmental education has been seen as an integral part of quality education. That is a whole separate stream. We had outdoor education, which was mainly about pedagogy, where things should be learned. And then we had in the early 1960s, there was this thrust that we need to actually protect the environment. It wasn't just education in the out of doors, it was education for the out of doors. Now, we were confused at the time, and I say we because I was part of all these discussions. We were confused that one was pedagogy and one was purpose and intent. They fit together beautifully, but in many countries there was tension between them. But in Stockholm in 1972, they realized that education, public awareness, was an important element in protecting the environment and moving forward with the Stockholm Declaration. And so in 1972, there was a resolution passed that we should look at trying to create an international part of environmental education, although the term had been used for 10 years before that. And so UNEP and UNESCO were charged to put together and build the International Environmental Education Program after a number of years of us arguing, what should it look like? What should it contain? What is environmental education? Finally, in 1977 in Tbilisi, they came up with the international program. Okay? Now, that spun off a separate stream because it was revisited again in 1992 as a way of implementing sustainable development. But the concept of environmental education as being an integral part of quality education, that continued. So we have the two different streams, both of them largely shepherded by UNESCO. I say largely because not exclusively. And then just recently, we had the UN itself come forward with the greening education to focus largely on the two great challenges of climate change and biodiversity. Okay? So we must always keep going through our mind the quality education. Why are we educating people? What should they know? Where should it be taught? How do we teach it? You know, all of at what age? When do we teach different things? All of that needs to be kept separate, and it will live long beyond whatever the latest implementation plan is. We're in the third. You know, we had Agenda 21 for the implementation plan of sustainable development. Then we had the Millennium Development Goals. And now we've got the 2030 agenda with sustainable development goals, and in 2030 we will have something else. But for school systems themselves see the number one priority is quality education. That's what parents want, that's what it's all about. And the underlying principles, like now, one of the big things we're trying to change is looking at the purpose of education being to make the individual all they can be, and everything is focused on the individual child. And now the thinking is education is a common good that we must take into our thoughts. The broader purpose of education serving and the individual being responsible and having responsibilities to society at large, the planet itself, and so on. So I just wanted to make that in the way of an opening comment. And let's have our first speaker. All right. Pramod, if you would come up, please.
Good morning, and thank you, Charles. Just waiting for the PP to come up. So, Charles mentioned about the Greening Education Partnership, and I think this is a great development where the climate change education or biodiversity education in that form, environment education moved from UNESCO, UNEP to the UN level. And this was decided at the Transformative Education Summit in 2022. And as an environmental education or ESG professional, if you ask me, this has been I would say, a key moment in this journey where for the first time, the focus shifted from the input and process to output and outcomes as a key performance indicators for the governments where they can be held accountable for. The challenge has been many. So when we look at the Greening Education Partnership, I would say it's a well-conceived document or a plan. But the biggest part, which is the ambitious challenge as such that has been put forward. For the challenge, the target which is there in terms of the pillar 1, which is at least 50% of all educational institutions. You can go to the JEP slide. Next, please. So for the Greening Education Partnership, the challenge in terms of greening school, the 50% for, just to take in the context, in a country like India, where we have around 1.4 million schools, we are talking about 700,000 schools. And the biggest scheme, when we are talking about National Green Co., which delivers environmental education, has reached out to 250,000 or 200,000 schools. And that means multiplying that by 300% in a very short time. And that scheme has been there since 2001 as such. So trying to do something in a very short period of 6 years that has been done traditionally in 20 or 30 years as such. Next slide, please. So based on our work, as I work with the Foundation of Environmental Education and co-coordinating the Pillar 1, we are the largest school-based program under the Greening Schools, the Eco Schools program. And the learning that we have got from the 101 countries over the period of around 30 years, in 2024, we completed 30 years, is that the first challenge, I think, and this conference is trying to get an agreement on what are those essential learnings as such. Because we cannot load education systems with what Charles called the adjectival education, biodiversity, then sometime pollution, something, some other topic will come now. The decade for ecosystem restoration is there, then ocean decade, and now the decade for scientific science, ocean sciences and sciences kind of thing, but just have an agreement where we can embed. And as part of the Greening Education Partnership, a document has been developed which is basically supposed to help countries with the quality standards on greening curriculum. And that document lists out the learning outcomes for at age appropriate level. But that's an important area that we need to, as a community, as environmental education policymakers, need to agree on that what is essential, and then how can we localize that context, give that space. And then also, we need to be solution-oriented, and handprint came from this institution as this country. And that is important because the hope as an important motivating factor needs to be there within the education system. And we need to shift framing environment education from a problem perspective to a solution perspective. Let's also, M. Pandeyji in the previous session highlighted Parampara as a publication. That every society, every community has those best practices that are low carbon or low environmental footprint. How do we also make sure that those are celebrated and continued as such? And it is important that the bridge between knowledge and action has to be bridged. And a recent EU report, which studied around 27 European countries, that 84 of students value sustainability, they know, but the action is only being done at 30% level. So that gap of solution orientation is to be seen in action has to be met as such. The third point is addressing the gender gap. You can see, and our own analysis of our own social media, website analytics, I had a chat with Judy from NWW and Nina. We see a 30% gap, which are the data that 30% gap is there, where in terms of female and male. Female are more following, taking action on environmental issues than male, the gap. And the European Union report also highlighted that aspect, that there is a big gap between male and female in terms of environmental action within the school education system. And then there is a tendency to engage into low impact actions as such. And we know what are the high impact action, but then we basically take action from a school resource perspective, but are not engaging the communities and not engaging the impact that country needs. For example, from a climate change perspective, one of the biggest is meat also, meat eating practices and the dead meat in particular. But how, as a school, as a community, as a society, we are addressing and trying to see that challenge at the large level. And we are like, okay, one meatless day and small action that can be taken and have that satisfaction of moving ahead. Next. Next, please. And then the other challenge that we see and which has to be supported is in terms of teacher capacity building for action-oriented learning. Within the Eco School program, we have the 7-step process of project-based learning. And over the 30 years, which it was conceived 30 years back, has shown that it is the process that makes the difference, that creates the action orientation. And how do we basically scale up the training and capacity building requirement? That's the biggest challenge, and it is practice. It cannot be taught in a very short course of 2 days or 3 days. It is a hand-holding support over a period of 1 to 2 years that what we have learned that is required as such. And then in terms of higher education curriculum, activation through research, how they can be very responsive to the needs that we have in terms of the data that we require. And with AI and other tools that are being developed, how we can get a real-time data, not like something which happened around 10 years back or 5 years back and might not be relevant today, and how higher education, through their curriculum integration of EE and ESD, can support it. And also, sorry for the typo, then in terms of greening skills for the greening jobs is also an important area to focus on. It is about greening skills that are required for the transformative process as such, which is an important area because apart from fields or faculties that are directly linked, others need to be helped to understand the skills that are required. One more slide. Last, please. And then in terms of scale, it is required. And without government support, we have seen that it doesn't happen. And the latest report from World Bank says that it needs around $8.5 US of one-time investment in infrastructure for climate resilience, which is around 2,000 rupees. And India is already spending around 50,000 rupees per annum per child. So adding 2,000 can do a big job in terms of climate change education and climate resilience, and which is a very small amount in terms of just 4% as increase in the budget. And then collaboration is the key. There's no competition. Together, we have not even reached 2% of the greening education partnership target. So there's a lot of space for everyone to work and help and such. And then ultimately, long term is program, not projects. Build the projects into the program requires time and patience, and then also support of and building upon the work that we have been doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pramod. I always love how you lay out the big picture with such clarity and so on. So now we've seen the vision of what, well, when I think the UN, et cetera, sees needs to be done. But of course, the simply having policy or recommendations, requests, does not equal action on the ground, right? And so now we're going to switch to some more of the speakers. And Dr. Huffman, if you would come over and talk a little bit, yes, about in Germany, how do you actually implement this vision?
Also from my side, very good morning, and thank you, Charles, for the invitation. I would like to pick up one word which Mr. Pande focused on again and again. There is no waste in nature. I would like to pick up words of Charles Hopkins in his introducing sentences, saying how to teach that, how to do that. And among the various hats I wear, I choose that one of the teacher training center in Karlsruhe, where I mainly work, and pick up also the topic of circular economy or circularization at all, to explain it a bit more detailed. The first point is what means to learn. One version is, or one possibility is, to repeat something what you heard, what you wrote down, and what you repeat. That is not the best variation of learning. If you turn it into the idea of experiencing and reflecting, it is much, much better. So that is one point which we do definitely need in higher education, especially with teachers, and enable them to create learning settings in which students are able to experience and reflect. And now I come back to this concrete topic. So if we take this circulation aspect, we ask, or I tested this many times, send your students for an hour in the immediate environment, either of their school or of their homes, and give them the activity or ask them to collect all natural waste they will find. And that they do have to bring back to the meeting point. You can be sure that the clever ones will come back with empty hands, while those who either did not understand the question or were doing anything else or did not understand, they will bring waste in the sense of human waste. And that immediately you do have a starting point for reflection and of experience, to reflect your experiences. Why is it like that, that there is, as you, Dr. Pandey, pointed out again and again, there is no waste. And we can, from this point, we can open a lot of various concepts of teaching, whether it is into systems thinking, whether it is into solution-oriented thinking. Not in a way that we say this or that, circular economy, separation of waste, is the solution, but to reflect even on the quality of the suggested solution. So, if we heard that Dr. Bramut was talking about, I think it was you, Bramut, who talked about best practices. Why are they best practices? And are they really best practices, or only relatively good ones? So we could start from this point, and the higher education of the teacher level should be in a way that we enable them to reflect on that kind of activities which are not in a sense of teaching, I repeat what I heard at university, but that I'm able to set up learning settings within which experiences and reflection is possible. If you are more interested in this solution-oriented teaching, there will be a workshop this afternoon. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. The complexity of that is there in how to teach it, how to engage teachers in that crowded curriculum. How do we squeeze it in? When we were trying to define what environmental education would be, there was great discussion about, is it something separate or is it something to be infused? And there have been articles in journals called Preventing Infusion Confusion, the complexity of it all. But now we want to switch to something, if you could come in and join me. This is, pardon me, but anyway, this is Sri Abhi Mohandas, and he runs a Montessori school, and we're just going to get into a little conversation with one another as how he prefers to present about it. I'd like you to, if you would come and tell us a little bit about the school. It's on a number of acres, and the approach that they use to address nature, but also the spirit of conservation. So,
thank you. Namaste. I'd like to start by showing you a part of a film so we get context of where what we are going to talk about. So may I please request you to Since we have limited time, I thought I'll just give you a little intro. So actually, this idea of environmental education is quite foreign for India, because till industrialization, there was no question of environmental education. It is only post-industrialization that India, it was post-1960 that we started thinking about the idea of environmental education. So in reality, we started in 1947. So in our curriculum, the concept is pretty well ingrained and it is living with nature. But the first question which comes to mind when I have been listening to the speakers is, can you have environmental education in a space which is not conducive? Do you not have to create an environment for environmental education? Shouldn't education be in an environment which showcases what you're talking about? Unfortunately, majority of schools do not either have the privilege or the resources to be in such a place. So how can you talk to a child, especially in urban areas, in municipal schools, about education and environment and all these things when they live in a multi-story government colony somewhere and they are going into a school concrete block with no trees, no playground? How can you teach them about environment? It sounds all very foreign to a young child. So first and foremost, at Shreyas, we have the privilege. I cannot say that that privilege is a huge part of it. To be in the middle of the city, to have the privilege of having a large grounds, but also having certain value systems which were ingrained by the founder and the people she was inspired by in the school. Which brings me to the current situation, that today the biggest issue are the definitions that we give. Most parents want their children to succeed, and therefore they send them to school and higher education and to give them a training or the skills to succeed. So we need to change or rather we need to look at what does success mean. And that is a definition which we try and bring in from a young age in the child. What is success? Is it making more money? Is it being better than the other person? Is it being at the top of your class? Now, these are the things which define success. These are the parameters for success. We question them. Are these the correct parameters? Should you change the parameters? We try and instill a vocabulary. Are you an owner or are you a custodian? Are you living in a landscaped space or are you creating an ecosystem so that you can cohabit? Which means, do you inhabit or do you cohabit? These are simple terms which define our lifestyle as you go along. And if simple things like this are instilled in a child, you ask the child to question, what is development? Is a developer really a developer who makes high-rise buildings by cutting down trees? Is he a developer? Or development means something else? We leave the questions open-ended. A school is not supposed to give answers. A school tries to ask the questions and assist the child in giving the answers. So this briefly gives you an idea about Shreyas Foundation.
Can you quickly give us one tip on how to convince parents that this really is important?
Fortunately, through the children who study at Shreyas, Kartike Bhai being one of them, I myself being one of them, I think we are able to, through our own lifestyle, hopefully pass it on, and other people are able to understand that, and our alumni are able to understand that and pass it on. So the children who apply to our school already know that they are going to an experimental school, they are not going to a competitive school, their aspirations are slightly different. So as just now we have 3,000 children, and we have a waiting list for admission. These 3,000 are not necessarily enrolled in a normal school. They attend the classroom, but not in a regular format. And one last thing, I would highly suggest to the conference organizers that when we have a conference on environmental education, would it not be interesting to have a code of conduct checklist for all the participants, which they must follow to participate in this conference? That might be something to look at. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. It's being a former school principal, I think what a privilege it is to have parents who already understand that what the philosophy of the school is and buy into it and push you, into living what you learn and learning what to live and so on. But now we're going to make a move from a small school to a school system. And we're going to, we have the privilege of hearing from the Joint Secretary for the Department of School Education and Literacy and the Ministry of Education for the Government of India. What a privilege. So please, if you would come forward. This is Mrs. Archana Sharma Aswasi. Thank you. And thank you so much, Professor. Yes.
Can I have the control then, or do I have to change? If you tell us, we'll come and change. Yeah, very good morning to everybody on the dais. It gives me a great pleasure to be here at this international conference on education on sustainability action organized by the Center for Environment Education. First of all, let me take this opportunity to wish everyone a very happy and green year to 2025. We have now bid adieu to 2024 and all the actions done in it, and it's the time for the year-end reviews for everybody. So I came across a very interesting research by Google where they mentioned what are the top searches in Bharat during 2024. So next slide, please. So cricket and elections, they dominated the Google searches, very obviously. The top 5 slots were about them. IPL, then T20 World Cup, Bharatiya Janata Party, election results, Olympics. However, the 6th one is interesting. Excessive heat was the most searched subject. It even beat Ratan Tata to position 7. So that is how the climate change is affecting all of us. We in the school education department had a brush with excessive heat last year when the department decided to organize summer camps for students all across the country. So the plan was to organize for 1 week from 5th June to which is the World Environment Day and ending on the 12th of June. But due to excessive heat in those months in various parts of the country, they had to defer the program because the schools could not be opened. And we ended up on 7th July 2024, almost a month later than the original plan. So that is how the environmental impact is going right up to the students, and they, even the children start understanding the effect of what is going on around them. Children, I suppose, are the least responsible for climate change, but they are one of the most vulnerable group which shares that burden of the climate change. So while accepting this grim reality, I want to share some positive and more exciting parts of organizing these summer camps. In February, it was decided to revitalize the eco clubs in our schools. We are supposed to have an eco club in all the schools, And the inspiration comes from the National Education Policy 2020. And we align the activities of these eco-clubs with mission life. So NEP 2020 very clearly, the new National Education Policy mentions in para 5.24, it will also appropriately integrate environmental awareness and sensitivity towards its conservation and sustainable development, so that it becomes an integral part of school curricula. So like the speakers before me mentioned, it is one part to have it in the school curricula, read it in the books as a theory. And it is a different way to actually experience it and make whatever course correction is required, and the understanding of when they go into the real world, how they can contribute to it. So the eco clubs is an initiative towards that, to make them sensitive right from early school days. So we began this conceptualization with the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change to go about it in the best way, UNICEF and the states and the UTs. And then it was decided that it will be on the 7 themes of mission life. Can we have the next slide, please? This is what our Honorable Prime Minister Modi at the global launch of Mission Life mentioned on 20th October 2022. I suppose it was in Ahmedabad only. That Mission Life is bringing together people with the mantra of lifestyle of the planet, for the planet and by the planet. This is the basis of being pro-planet people. And the 7 activities mentioned in the life themes are adopting healthy lifestyles, sustainable food systems, reduce e-waste, reduce waste, save energy, save water, and say no to single-use plastic. So these are the themes by which we also started the summer camps. The eco clubs in Samagra Shiksha scheme, which is the education system from preschool up to class 12. So it is an intervention under that, and it provides a constructive platform to bring these into experiential learning for the children. These are the various activities that were conducted across the country during the week, and I would like to share the numbers that participated in the summer camps. So almost 111 million students, teachers and community members went about doing environmental activities in the summer camp. I would also like to share 2 specific instances of community participation. So there is this school teacher from Chhattisgarh who came up with the idea of making seed balls. And along with the students, they made almost 1.25 lakhs, that is 125,000 seed balls, which they then scattered across the degraded land during the monsoon season. And they are now bearing fruits. We have plants from those seed balls. Then in Tripura, while making the boundary walls across the schools, they decided to make a biofencing. So huge forestation was done by that means. Every school has a biofence around it, and it was done by the children and the teachers together. Later in the year, then we had a Shiksha Saptah also, again for 1 week, in which 1 day was devoted to environment, and we had again 51 million saplings were planted in the Plant for Mother. Ek Ped Maa Ke Naam was the campaign initiated by the PM, and 67.5 million students participated in that too. So in India we talk in millions, it comes to us in very naturally. So in fact, since June 24, that is not even a year, we have established 1.46 lakh, 146,000 eco clubs in schools, and students are working in that. We are also coming up with a dedicated portal for eco clubs for Mission Life to capture and monitor the activities at the school level. Many NGOs and CSOs are also partnering in these activities in the schools. I would like to end with pointing out that environmental awareness and sustainability is not a new concept in Bharat. The ancient worldview places great emphasis on living in harmony with nature. As we all know, we have always been the mountains and the rivers and all natural phenomena are sacred to us, and we have gods for that. So that comes very naturally. What we need now is to bring back that with our students so that it carries on with them. The philosophy is also evident in texts like Vedas, which was years, thousands of years back they were made, and they mention prayers dedicated to rivers, forests, mountains, animals. Arthashastra written by Chanakya, it had a detailed chapter on forest administration and sustainable resource management. It also mentioned penalties for illegal logging and rewards for afforestation. Similarly, Rigveda contains over 60 hymns praising the natural elements. Water conservation was a key practice in ancient India again. We had sophisticated systems for rainwater harvesting, and step wells and tanks and reservoirs have been found across the country in various archaeological surveys. So basically it is in the, we have that in our system, it's just to bring it into focus that more effort is required. And lastly, my personal views, nothing related to Government of India, but I feel that Mother Earth does not require any survival help from us. It will survive despite us, it will survive because of us, both. What we need is survival of humankind, for which we have to make effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Madam Secretary. I should apologize for the smile on my face. Coming from Canada and being a former principal of residential outdoor education center that was the largest one in Canada, it slept about 200. And you're talking about 34 million going to camp, you know, this kind of thing. I'm just. We have 260 million students in our schools. 260 million students. It's going to take several days, isn't it, to do that? Anyway, I apologize, but it was totally being overwhelmed. Lastly, we would like to bring up Professor Medali, who is going to talk about some innovations in schools and I think also higher education. And so we'll turn it over to him.
Good morning. So I'm Avinash, and I'm going to do a quick exercise with you. Can I have all the left hands up, please? All the left hand up. We'll bring reins into this room. So with one finger, we'll have to start clapping. Try. 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, what a wonderful way of welcoming me. Thank you so much for doing that. So yeah, that's what I think. It's a very difficult spot to be in when your director, your program directors, their mentors sitting in the audience, and you're talking about an organization's 40 years and what they have done in school education, which is the DNA of your process. And I think it's, and then again, there are people who are saying that it is 6 minutes, 6.5. So I'll try and pass that race. But what we had been doing as environment educators, big question, and I think Karthik Bhai was the master of analogies. I generally felt that starting with education itself, that we are good people doing common good. Is this one thing we could write on our maybe visiting cards, that whosoever you met, whichever condition you are in, you're always trying to find out what good could be done in whatever circumstances, whichever institution, may it a mining industry, maybe a person working as whatever in a pollution control board or as an industry, will not leave anybody behind. Everybody has to really work together, and you find an opportunity that where we really trying to work with them in collaboration with them. We understood education in the broadest sense of the term, right from the whole idea of Tansen becoming a Tansen, who had an exposure to reproduce wild voices to classical music. I think when we are educating, we are trying to really figure out whatever people know, you're trying to bring in that classical music element into it by trying to give the exposure of that classic, and then bringing out excellence from teachers and students to become the future generation who can really sing the tune of harmony with nature. I also feel that it's a big challenge, and when I look at my own joining of this organization from an higher education institution from a teaching, being a lecturer to joining CEE as program officer, I feel that I was interested in psychology, but after 20 years, I'm realizing that all people working in CE have been actually working as counselors. One analogy I feel, if we have been generally counselors, we had been very trying to make sense out of others' wheel of emotion. I'll just showcase quickly the wheel of emotion and take a minute for that. Whole idea is that trying to understand what the other person is feeling, trying to understand what they're feeling about nature, and then trying to make sense out of, from all the grief or disgust, you're trying to do education means we're trying to take people to that happiness, where people feel trusted, where people feel doing something for the environment, where they feel confident, grateful, peaceful. And I think that has been the journey of any environment educator, and I feel as environment educators working in any sector, the effort or the DNA of the family of CEE, which our chairman was mentioning, was predominantly felt like that to me today, when I got a surprise that I need to speak on the Plenary instead of introducing the plenary and people here. What I also feel that what we have been trying to do is not manufacturing content and giving it as a dry company. One analogy I feel like that we are in harmony with developing like musical instruments. And we would have funders who would bring in a guitar and want a drum sound out of that. We would have funder coming at the violin but wanting a piano sound out of it. We have also a master like Karthik Bhai who will change his TOR on one hand. On the other hand, we would try and be in tune with them and trying to enhance the harmony into the programs and trying to be in as melodious as possible. All melodies may not remain very good, but I think all the concert, including this confidence, we would try and do better, even you are in the stress. What I finally would like to say is, we are, with this whole segment, when its whole work kind of starts, you start with 20 people. You get an opportunity when the Operation Blackboard is going on, where the brief to then CE colleagues was, there is only teacher and blackboard and do environment education. You start from that. You gradually, team grows, mandate grows. You start working with, like, hey, Pramod Bhai is here. We had been hearing 2 lakh number. We had been hearing 17 states. He had been the National Resource Agency for National Green Road Program. Working with teachers, working with larger education systems, developing guidelines for diet, developing guidelines for master trainers, developing guidelines for even how an education officer could really have certain innovative speeches or letters to master trainers. All has been done, thought through, and as you start digging your own organization archives, you already know that somebody thought about it 20 years ago. And that's really gratifying feeling, looking today at our own archives, which is in the progress. But point remains that right from the education, you enter and you're trying to bring in the consciousness of good and then trying to expand it. You go down by setting up, let's say, Planet Discovery School, where from an age where children know basic literacy and numeracy, you're also trying to go down to also understand how to use nature as tool to communicating or for exposing them to the nature. On the other hand, you move up the ladder by developing 11, 12 standard textbooks, developing 10 standard and even NCERT textbooks. The practice has been partly done. Going to the university purposes, going maybe the CEPT University and say that you have studio and can we do street for people with you, and trying to put up a new joinee member to be a faculty there who is no clue of architecture, but that we have done several times. Going to agriculture university and saying that can we work with your faculty members and can we really create a module for you on climate advisories and do it during COVID period, the people who have done that. realizing that we wanted to become a university in last conference, but moving all that space into digital space and creating CE Academy to engage anybody who's interested in doing something and convert them as professors of practice in environment education and trying to do online, applying the space online is also what we are trying to do. In nutshell, I feel that with Regional Center of Expertise, with UNU, the international level, I think an organization which right from age 3 to lifelong learning, I don't think so any rare organization would have all the predominantly essential learnings in each thematic and still trying to become a good counselor for environment education. Thank you.
I want to make one announcement before we thank our panel. There will be a special session this afternoon in here really focusing on higher education. When one thinks of the proportion of people who actually graduate from university being reasonably small to who will actually have the power to shape the future, it's largely the university graduates who assume roles in the public sector, the private sector, our faith-based leaders, our poets, our dancers. They are a group of people that we really do need to think very carefully about how we engage. And so that will be in here this afternoon at 4:30. So this session largely about schools, this afternoon more focused on higher education. But now, if you would, please welcome or thank our panel. Thank you very, very much.
Mr. Charles, you would like to request you.
Do I present them?
I would like to do it for me.
Yes, thank you.
I invite everyone for a group photo, please. Dr. Pramod Sharma, Shri Abhay Mangaldas ji, Professor Hoffman, please join us for a group photo. Thank you all. Thank you to Professor Charles. Thank you, speakers.
I just wanted to announce the tea is served outside the parallel sessions areas like we had yesterday. The parallel sessions are starting at 12. So just find your way around. Thank you.